I never thought my quiet life would explode into chaos on such a perfect morning. The sun beat down on the county farmer's market as I arranged my fresh tomatoes into neat, red pyramids. My weathered hands, once trained to kill, now carefully placed each vegetable with the same precision. Sweat trickled down my round face. I gained quite a bit of weight since my Delta Force days, and most folks around here just call me Big Jack, the friendly fat farmer with the juiciest produce in 3 counties. "Morning, Mr. Reeves," called Mrs. Peterson as she examined my carrots. "These look wonderful today." I smiled and nodded, watching 3 men enter the market from the corner of my eye. Something about them made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. 20 years in Special Forces teaches you to spot trouble, and these guys were radiating it. They moved with too much purpose, scanning the crowd like predators. The tallest one caught my stare and quickly looked away. That's when I knew they weren't just here for fresh produce. "Beautiful day for the market," I said to Mrs. Peterson, keeping my voice steady while tracking the men's movements. "Take an extra bunch of those carrots. On the house." She beamed, unaware of the danger approaching. As she walked away, the 3 men converged on my stand. The crowd seemed to thin around us, as if ordinary folks could sense the coming storm. "Nice setup you got here," said the tall one, running his fingers along my wooden display table. His eyes were cold, calculating. The other 2 flanked him, one skinny with nervous energy, the other built like a bull with hands that kept drifting toward his waistband. "Can I help you gentlemen find some vegetables?" I asked, playing the role of the simple farmer. My right hand drifted beneath the table, where I kept a small knife, not for protection, but for cutting twine. At least, that's what I told myself when I started carrying it. "We're not here for vegetables," the tall one said, leaning closer. "Word is you had a good haul last weekend at the state fair. Must be carrying some serious cash, fat man." The market bustled around us, but we might as well have been alone. Nobody noticed the tension crackling between us. I counted exits, measured distances, and assessed threats, habits I thought I'd left behind years ago. "Look, fellows, there's been a mistake. I'm just a simple farmer," the bull-like man snorted. "Simple and stupid looks like." His jacket shifted, revealing what I immediately recognized as a concealed weapon. Not the careful concealment of a professional, but dangerous nonetheless. My heartbeat remained steady. Strange how the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. 7 ways to disarm them flashed through my head, along with 12 ways to drop all 3 without causing a scene. But I wasn't that man anymore, or so I'd been telling myself. "Let's take a walk," the tall one said, not a request. "Behind a market. Bring your cash box." He flashed a knife, keeping it low where only I could see. "Don't make a scene, or people might get hurt." The skinny one glanced nervously at a young mother with 2 small children at the next stall. The threat was clear. I nodded slowly, reaching for my cash box with deliberate movements. The familiar weight of fear and anger settled in my stomach like an old friend. For 5 years, I'd been Jack Reeves, the overweight organic farmer who made amazing apple butter and kept to himself. Before that, I was Commander Reeves, the man sent when situations were beyond salvaging. "Smart choice," the tall one said, mistaking my compliance for weakness. As we walked toward the back of the market, I cataloged everything about them. The tall one walked with a slight limp, old injury to the right knee. The skinny one had track marks partially hidden by a long-sleeved shirt despite the heat. The bull had military bearing, probably discharged, based on a chip on his shoulder. Behind the market, between my truck and the dumpsters, they formed a semicircle around me. "No witnesses here, just as they planned." "Hand it over," the tall one demanded, extending his hand. I looked down at my cash box, then back at them. "You boys have no idea what you're doing, do you?" For just a moment, doubt flickered across the tall one's face. Then he laughed. "Look at this guy. What are you going to do, sit on us?" His friends chuckled. I sighed. Last chance to walk away. The tall one's smile vanished. He flicked his knife open. "No, old man. Last chance for you." As he lunged forward, time seemed to slow down. My body remembered what my mind had tried to forget. My left hand deflected his knife, thrust while my right delivered a precise strike to his throat. As he gasped and staggered, I was already moving toward the others. The skinny one's eyes widened in shock. He fumbled for something in his pocket, but I was already on him. One strike to the solar plexus folded him like paper. The bull was better. He got a punch off that glanced against my shoulder before I swept his legs and drove him hard into the gravel. His gun, a cheap 9mm, skittered away under my truck. 3 seconds. That's all it took. The 3 men who thought they'd found an easy target lay groaning at my feet. I stood over them, breathing evenly, my heart rate barely elevated. The tall one looked up at me with new eyes. Eyes filled with fear and confusion. "Who the hell are you?" he gasped. Before I could answer, I heard someone clapping slowly behind me. I turned to see a figure standing in the shadows, watching. "Impressive, Commander Reeves," the stranger said. "Very impressive. It seems retirement hasn't dulled your edge after all." As the stranger stepped into the light, my blood turned to ice. A face I never thought I'd see again. A face that belonged to someone who should have been dead. Act 1. I never thought my quiet life would explode into chaos on such a perfect morning. The sun beat down on the county farmer's market as I arranged my fresh tomatoes into neat, red pyramids. My weathered hands, once trained to kill, now carefully placed each vegetable with the same precision. Sweat trickled down my round face. I'd gained quite a bit of weight since my Delta Force days, and most folks around here just called me Big Jack, the friendly fat farmer with the juiciest produce in 3 counties. "Morning, Mr. Reeves," called Mrs. Peterson as she examined my carrots. "These look wonderful today." I smiled and nodded, watching 3 men enter the market from the corner of my eye. Something about them made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. 20 years in Special Forces teaches you to spot trouble, and these guys were radiating it. They moved with too much purpose, scanning the crowd like predators. The tallest one caught my stare and quickly looked away. That's when I knew they weren't just here for fresh produce. "Beautiful day for the market," I said to Mrs. Peterson, keeping my voice steady while tracking the men's movements. "Take an extra bunch of those carrots. On the house." She beamed, unaware of the danger approaching. As she walked away, the 3 men converged on my stand. The crowd seemed to thin around us, as if ordinary folks could sense the coming storm. "Nice setup you got here," said the tall one, running his fingers along my wooden display table. His eyes were cold, calculating. The other 2 flanked him, one skinny with nervous energy, the other built like a bull with hands that kept drifting toward his waistband. "Can I help you gentlemen find some vegetables?" I asked, playing the role of the simple farmer. My right hand drifted beneath the table, where I kept a small knife, not for protection, but for cutting twine. At least, that's what I told myself when I started carrying it. "We're not here for vegetables," the tall one said, leaning closer. "Word is you had a good haul last weekend at the state fair. Must be carrying some serious cash, fat man." The market bustled around us, but we might as well have been alone. Nobody noticed the tension crackling between us. I counted exits, measured distances, and assessed threats, habits I thought I'd left behind years ago. "Look, fellows, there's been a mistake. I'm just a simple farmer." The bull-like man snorted. "Simple and stupid, looks like." His jacket shifted, revealing what I immediately recognized as a concealed weapon. Not the careful concealment of a professional, but dangerous nonetheless. My heartbeat remained steady. Strange how the body remembers what the mind tries to forget. 7 ways to disarm them flashed through my head, along with 12 ways to drop all 3 without causing a scene. But I wasn't that man anymore, or so I've been telling myself. "Let's take a walk," the tall one said, not a request. "Behind the market. Bring your cash box." He flashed a knife, keeping it low where only I could see. "Don't make a scene, or people might get hurt." The skinny one glanced nervously at a young mother with 2 small children at the next stall. The threat was clear. I nodded slowly, reaching for my cash box with deliberate movements. The familiar weight of fear and anger settled in my stomach like an old friend. 4 or 5 years, I'd been Jack Reeves, the overweight organic farmer who made amazing apple butter and kept to himself. Before that, I was Commander Reeves, the man sent when situations were beyond salvaging. "Smart choice," the tall one said, mistaking my compliance for weakness. As we walked toward the back of the market, I cataloged everything about them. The tall one walked with a slight limp, old injury to the right knee. The skinny one had track marks partially hidden by a long-sleeved shirt despite the heat. The bull had military bearing, probably discharged, based on the chip on his shoulder. Behind the market, between my truck and the dumpsters, they formed a semicircle around me. No witnesses here, just as they planned. Hand it over, the tall one demanded, extending his hand. I looked down at my cash box, then back at them. You boys have no idea what you're doing, do you? For just a moment, doubt flickered across the tall one's face. Then he laughed. Look at this guy. What are you gonna do, sit on us? His friends chuckled. I sighed. Last chance to walk away. The tall one's smile vanished. He flicked his knife open. No, old man. Last chance for you. As he lunged forward, time seemed to slow down. My body remembered what my mind had tried to forget. My left hand deflected his knife, thrust, while my right delivered a precise strike to his throat. As he gasped and staggered, I was already moving toward the others. The skinny one's eyes widened in shock. He fumbled for something in his pocket, but I was already on him. One strike to the solar plexus folded him like paper. The bull was better. He got a punch off that glanced against my shoulder before I swept his legs and drove him hard into the gravel. His gun, a cheap 9mm, skittered away under my truck. 3 seconds. That's all it took. The 3 men who thought they'd found an easy target lay groaning at my feet. I stood over them, breathing evenly, my heart rate barely elevated. The tall one looked up at me with new eyes. Eyes filled with fear and confusion. Who the hell are you? He gasped. Before I could answer, I heard someone clapping slowly behind me. I turned to see a figure standing in the shadows, watching. Impressive, Commander Reeves, the stranger said. Very impressive. It seems retirement hasn't dulled your edge after all. As the stranger stepped into the light, my blood turned to ice. A face I never thought I'd see again. A face that belonged to someone who should have been dead. Act 2. Reed. I breathed, hardly believing my eyes. Colonel Marcus Reed was supposed to have died in that explosion in Kandahar 7 years ago. Yet here he stood, looking remarkably alive for a dead man. The 3 men at my feet looked between us, confusion clear on their bruised faces. You know this fat bastard? Asked the tall one, struggling to his feet. Reed's smile never reached his eyes. Oh, we're old friends, aren't we, Jack? Very old friends. He gestured to the 3 men. I see you've met my associates, Cooper, Mick, and I believe you've already been acquainted with Darnell here. My mind raced. Reed was my former commanding officer, the man who'd recruited me into Delta Force 25 years ago. The man I trusted with my life countless times. The man who, according to every official record, had died a hero. You should be dead, I said simply. Reed shrugged. Many people should be dead, Jack, including you, several times over. Yet here we all are. The market sound seemed far away now. A child laughed somewhere in the distance, reminding me of all the innocent people just beyond these dumpsters. What do you want, Reed? I asked, though I was beginning to piece it together. The robbery was staged, a test perhaps. A way to see if I still had my skills after 5 years of growing tomatoes and raising chickens. What? I want many things, old friend. Reed pulled out a cigarette and lit it casually. But right now, I want to know where you hid the drive. The drive. My stomach twisted. Those 4 little words confirmed my worst fears. I have no idea what you're talking about. I lied, buying time while assessing the situation. Reed wouldn't have come alone. There would be others watching, waiting. Reed sighed dramatically. Jack. Always so loyal, even when loyalty is misplaced. The agency wants what belongs to them. The agency? I almost laughed. Is that what we're calling it now? Last I checked, the operations we conducted in Serbia weren't exactly agency sanctioned. Reed's eyes narrowed. Cooper, Mick, and Darnell exchanged glances, clearly not privy to this level of information. Boss, Darnell ventured. What's going on? I thought this was just a shakedown. Reed ignored him, focusing entirely on me. I'm offering you a chance, Jack. A chance to do the right thing. Hand over the drive, and we can all go back to our lives. You to your farming. He said the word like it tasted bad in his mouth. me to my retirement in Geneva. And if I refuse? I asked, though I knew the answer. Reed's smile turned predatory. They'll have to take it from you. And while you're still good, Jack, surprisingly good for a man your age and condition, you're not that good. As if on cue, 3 more men emerged from around the corner of the market building. They were younger, fitter, and moved with the unmistakable precision of operatives. Fresh blood, trained in the same programs that had forged me. Meet the new generation, Reed said proudly. While you've been playing in the dirt, we've been busy. I weighed my options. 6 against 1, with Reed himself being a formidable opponent even in his 60s. I'd lost the element of surprise. And worst of all, we were too close to civilians. Come on, Jack, Reed coaxed. You really want blood spilled here? At your precious farmer's market? Among the nice, normal people you've been pretending to be one of. He was right, and he knew it. I couldn't risk a confrontation here. Fine, I said, but not here. Too many witnesses. Reed nodded, sensible as always. My car is parked behind the post office. We'll take a little drive, have a civilized conversation about old times and missing property. I recognized the tactic. Get me in the car, take me to a secondary location. My chances of survival would plummet. How about my farm instead? I countered. It's private. The drive is there. Reed studied me for a long moment, then nodded. Your farm it is. Cooper will ride with you to make sure you don't get any ideas about running. As if I'd run. As if I hadn't been preparing for this day for 5 years, hoping it would never come, but knowing deep down it might. Cooper, the bull-like man, glared at me as he rubbed his jaw where I'd struck him. I got my eye on you, old man. We walked back through the market, a strange procession. I nodded at familiar faces, maintained the illusion of normalcy. Mrs. Peterson waved cheerfully as I passed, unaware that her friendly neighborhood farmer was walking to what might be his execution. At my truck, Cooper climbed into the passenger seat while Reed and the others got into 2 black SUVs. As I turned the key, Cooper pulled out his gun and rested it on his leg. Just drive, he grunted. No funny business. I pulled onto the main road, mind racing through scenarios. The drive was real enough. A small data storage device containing evidence of operations that would destroy careers and upend power structures if it ever came to light. Operations Reed had commanded and I had executed, believing we were serving a greater good. How long you been working for Reed? I asked conversationally. Cooper grunted. Long enough. And what did he tell you about me? That you're a thief. Stole something valuable. That you went soft and got fat. I nodded, watching the SUVs following at a careful distance through my rearview mirror. Did he tell you what I stole? Cooper shifted uncomfortably. Not my business to know. That's right, I agreed, because knowing too much in this business gets you killed. His knuckles whitened around the gun. Shut up and drive. We rode in silence the rest of the way to my farm. The familiar white farmhouse came into view with its wide porch and green shutters. My sanctuary for 5 years. The place where I'd finally found peace after decades of violence. As we pulled into the gravel driveway, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. The blue ceramic flower pot on the porch steps was turned upside down, a signal I'd arranged with only one person. Sarah was here, and she was warning me of danger. Before Cooper could register my reaction, I slammed on the brakes, throwing him forward against the dashboard. In the moment his grip loosened, I struck, precise, efficient without anger. His gun fell to the floorboard as he slumped unconscious against the door. The SUVs were still turning into my driveway. I had maybe 30 seconds. I reached under my seat and grabbed the small metal box I'd installed years ago, my emergency kit. Inside was a compact pistol, a burner phone, and a set of keys to a vehicle that wasn't registered in my name. As Reed's men poured out of their vehicles, weapons drawn, I slipped out of the truck and into the old storm cellar behind the garden shed. They'd find it eventually, but not before I accessed the tunnel I'd spent my first year here digging, an escape route leading to the abandoned property next door. I heard Reed shouting orders as I pulled the cellar door closed behind me. Find him. He can't have gone far. Little did they know that the fat farmer they'd underestimated had never stopped being Commander Reeves. I'd just gotten better at hiding it. As I moved through the darkness of the tunnel, I activated the burner phone and sent a single text message to a number I'd memorized years ago. Broken Arrow. The Colonel lives. Within seconds, the reply came. Coordinates? I smiled grimly in the darkness. My old team was still out there, and they were still loyal to me, not to Reed. The game was just beginning. I emerged from the tunnel into the fading daylight, feeling the weight of my past crushing down on me once again. The abandoned Johnson property had been vacant for years, its farmhouse nothing but a burned-out shell after a lightning strike. Perfect cover. From here, I could see Reed's men swarming my property like angry hornets, tearing apart the home I'd built with my bare hands. Blood trickled from a cut on my forehead where I'd scraped against a low beam in the tunnel. I wiped it away and checked the burner phone. 3 messages waited. Martinez en route. ETA in 90 minutes. Wilson coming from east. Et avios. Jackson already in position. My heart swelled. My old team, the men I'd fought beside, bled beside, they were coming. But could they get here in time? I scanned the tree line and spotted the small red flag tied to an oak branch. Jackson's signal. He was already watching. I made the hand signal we'd used countless times in the field. Clear area, maintain distance, await further. Through my peripheral vision, I caught a flash of movement acknowledging my order. Reed would tear my farm apart looking for that drive. What he didn't know was that it wasn't hidden in some secret compartment or buried in the garden. The truth was far more personal. My fingers traced the long scar beneath my shirt. After Serbia, when I realized what we'd stumbled upon, I'd taken precautions. The small, watertight capsule containing the drive was surgically implanted next to my liver. Reed would have to cut it out of me to get it. A twig snapped behind me, and I spun, dropping into a fighting stance despite my bulky frame. Easy, Commander, said a familiar voice. Sarah Chun stepped from behind a tree, her police uniform replaced by dark tactical gear. Her eyes widened at the sight of me. You're bleeding. Barely a scratch, I said, relaxing slightly. How did you know to come? Sarah's face hardened. Reed's people have been watching me for weeks. I thought it was because of my investigation into those missing kids. Turns out they were watching me to get to you. She paused, checking her weapon with practiced hands. Reed has Emma, my goddaughter. My world tilted on its axis. When I demanded, ice forming in my veins. This morning, she never made it to school. Sarah's voice remained steady, but I could see the fear in her eyes. Mother first, cop second. Reed called me personally, said if I wanted to see my daughter again, I needed to help him bring you in. And instead you warned me. I said, understanding dawning. Sarah Hill, I know what he'll do. She cut me off. But Reed doesn't know about us, about our connection. He thinks I'm just a local police chief who happens to shop at your market stall. He has no idea I was your wife's best friend. No idea we've stayed in touch. I nodded slowly, thoughts racing. He's using Emma as leverage against you, to get to me. He must be desperate. Sarah handed me a small satellite phone. He wants me to call when I have you. The pieces clicked into place. Reed had been watching, planning, waiting for the right moment. Today's market confrontation wasn't the beginning. It was the culmination of months of surveillance. And now an innocent child was caught in the crossfire. We need a plan, I said, checking the magazine in my pistol. I already have one, Sarah replied, determination hardening her voice. And you're not going to like it. She was right. I hated it, but it might be our only chance to save Emma. Night fell as we hammered out the details. Jackson joined us, emerging from the shadows like a ghost. He'd aged since I'd seen him last, silver streaking his dark hair, but his eyes were the same, sharp, alert, deadly. Commander, he nodded, the single word carrying the weight of our shared history. It's just Jack now. I reminded him, though we both knew that wasn't true anymore. Not today. Jackson smiled grimly. Not from where I'm standing. Sarah laid out a rough map of the area on the ground. According to the tracer I put on Reed's vehicle when I arrived at your farm, they've set up here. She pointed to an abandoned grain storage facility 5 miles north. It's isolated, defensible, with clear sight lines. How many? Jackson asked. I counted 8, plus Reed, she replied. All armed, all trained. I studied the map, old instincts surging back. They'll expect a direct approach, so we won't give them one. For the next hour, we planned. Martinez and Wilson would arrive soon, bringing equipment we desperately needed. But Emma didn't have much time. Reed was many things, but patient wasn't one of them. "There's something else you should know," Sarah said quietly as we finalized our approach. "Reed has been asking questions around town about your wife's death." The old pain surfaced, sharp and familiar. Annie had died 3 years ago. Cancer, swift and merciless. Her death had hollowed me out, left me even more determined to leave my old life behind. "Why would he care about Annie?" I asked. Sarah hesitated. "Because he doesn't believe she's dead." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What are you talking about?" "I buried her. We both did. Reed thinks it was staged. He thinks she took something from him, and you help her disappear." My mind reeled. Annie alive? It wasn't possible. I'd held her hand as she slipped away, felt her final breath. Unless a distant memory surfaced. Annie, in her final weeks, delirious with pain medication, whispering about things hidden in plain sight, and making me promise to keep it safe no matter what. I thought it was the ramblings of a dying woman. What if it was more? Before I could pursue that thought, the satellite phone rang. Sarah answered, putting it on speaker. "Chief Chun." Reed's voice was smooth, controlled. "I expected to hear from you hours ago. I've been busy cleaning up your mess at the market," Sarah replied coolly. 3 men assaulted in broad daylight tends to create paperwork. Reed chuckled. "Always the dedicated public servant. Do you have what I want?" Sarah's eyes met mine. "Yes, I have him." "Excellent. Bring him to the coordinates I'm sending you. Come alone. You have 1 hour." The line went dead. The phone pinged with an incoming message. Coordinates matching the grain facility. "He's getting cocky," Jackson muttered. "That's good for us." I nodded, but doubt gnawed at me. Reed was many things, but stupid wasn't one of them. If he was showing his hand this clearly, he had an ace we couldn't see. As if reading my thoughts, Sarah said, "What if it's a trap?" "Of course it's a trap," I replied, checking my weapon one last time. "But now we know where Emma is. And Reed has made a critical mistake." "What's that?" Jackson asked. I smiled grimly, feeling the weight of the commander settling back onto my shoulders. "He still thinks he's hunting a fat farmer, not the man he trained." I stood, joints protesting after years of disuse. Time to remind him who I really am. Blood pounded in my ears as I approached the grain facility. Sarah drove slowly, her police cruiser's headlights cutting through the darkness. My hands were bound in front of me, tight enough to look convincing, loose enough to slip free when needed. I'd lost the farmer's flannel shirt, now dressed in a simple black t-shirt that did little to hide my bulk. "There's still time to reconsider," Sarah said, eyes fixed on the road. "Not for Emma," I replied. As we approached the main gate, 2 armed men stepped out of the shadows. Sarah stopped the car, rolling down her window. "Chief Chun," one said, shining a flashlight into the car. His eyes settled on me in the passenger seat. "This him, Jack Reeves, as requested," Sarah replied, her voice professional, betraying none of the tension I knew she felt. The men exchanged glances, then waved us through. Too easy. Reed was confident, another good sign. Overconfidence made men careless. The facility loomed ahead, a hulking silhouette against the night sky. Once busy with the commerce of rural America, now a shell housing something far darker. Floodlights illuminated the central loading area, harsh white light creating sharp shadows. Perfect for concealing movements at the perimeter where Jackson was already in position, with Martinez and Wilson approaching from different angles. We parked where indicated. Another armed man approached, opening my door roughly. "Out," he ordered, grabbing my arm. I stumbled deliberately as I exited, playing the part of the frightened civilian. The guard smirked, shoving me forward toward the main building. Sarah followed, her face a mask of professional detachment. Inside, the cavernous space echoed with our footsteps. Metal catwalks crisscrossed overhead, and the smell of old grain lingered in the air. At the center stood Reed, looking exactly as I remembered him, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man used to command. "Jack," he said, smiling without warmth. So good of you to join us. My eyes scanned the room, counting guards, noting positions, identifying threats. No sign of Emma. Where's the girl? Sarah demanded, stepping forward. Reed raised an eyebrow. All in good time, Chief Chun. First, I need to confirm our friend here has what I'm looking for. He approached me, circling slowly. You've let yourself go, Commander. Domestic life clearly doesn't suit you. I remained silent, eyes forward, counting his steps. 5 guards visible, at least 2 more on the catwalks above. Exits to the north and east. Metal stairs leading to upper levels. Nothing to say. Reed prodded. No, would he come back? I'm disappointed. Where's Emma? I asked, my voice low. Reed smiled. Ah, there he is, still focused on the mission. He snapped his fingers, and a guard stepped forward to the laptop. Reed turned it to face us. On screen, Emma sat in what looked like a storage closet, knees pulled to her chest. She was alive, unharmed from what I could see. The timestamp at the bottom of the screen showed it was current footage. Sarah took an involuntary step forward, but one of the guards blocked her path. She's safe, Reed said. For now. Her continued well-being depends entirely on you, Jack. Or should I call you Commander Reeves? I met his gaze steadily. Jack is fine. I'm not a commander anymore. Reed laughed. Once Delta, always Delta. You know that better than anyone. He closed the laptop. Now let's discuss the drive. This was the moment of truth, the pivot point of our plan. I needed to keep Reed talking, keep him focused on me while my team moved into position. What makes you think I have it? I asked. Reed's eyes hardened. Don't play games. After Serbia, you were the only one with access to the complete file. When you disappeared 5 years ago, so did it. I retired, Reed. Officially. With the agency's blessing. Perhaps, he conceded. But you took something that didn't belong to you. Something that could cause complications for many powerful people. I shifted my weight, testing the bindings on my wrists. Almost loose enough. Including you. Reed spread his hands. I merely follow orders, same as you did. Is that what we're calling it now? I asked, allowing a hint of anger to color my tone. Following orders? Was that what Serbia was? What about Jakarta? Or Damascus? A flicker of unease crossed Reed's face. Careful, Jack. Some things are better left unspoken. From the corner of my eye, I saw Sarah shift slightly, her hand moving toward her concealed backup weapon. Not yet. We needed to be sure where Emma was being held. Where is she? I demanded again. I want to see her in person. Reconsider this. All in good time. First, tell me where the drive is. I laughed, the sound echoing in the cavernous space. You really think I'd hide it somewhere you could find it by tearing apart my farm? Something changed in Reed's expression. Calculation, reassessment. Where is it, Jack? I met his gaze steadily. Cut it out of me and find out. Reed's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. You always were thorough. He nodded to one of his men. Bring the kit. Sarah tensed beside me. This wasn't part of the plan. Sir, one of the guards approached Reed, speaking quietly. Perimeter sensors just went offline in sectors 3 and 5. Reed's head snapped toward the man. Check it. Now. He turned back to me, suspicion blooming. Who else knows you're here, Jack? I smiled. Who says anyone else knows? The facility's lights flickered once, twice, then stabilized. Reed's expression hardened. Secure the girl, he barked into his radio, and search the chief. She's not what she seems. 2 guards moved toward Sarah. I could see the calculation in her eyes. Too soon, not according to plan, but we had no choice now. I dropped my weight suddenly, snapping the loosened bindings and driving my shoulder into the nearest guard's midsection. Sarah moved simultaneously, drawing her weapon with practiced speed. The first shot dropped the guard reaching for her. The second went wide as another tackled her from behind. Reed was already moving, shouting orders, drawing his own weapon. Time slowed as training took over. I grabbed the fallen guard's pistol, rolled behind a stack of crates as bullets splintered the wood around me. The lights went out completely. Martinez had reached the generator. Emergency lighting kicked in seconds later, bathing everything in a red glow that transformed the space into something from a nightmare. Gunfire erupted from the catwalk, Jackson announcing his presence. 2 of Reed's men fell. The others scrambled for cover. I moved through the shadows toward where I'd last seen Sarah. She was pinned down behind a forklift, exchanging fire with a guard on the upper level. 8 o'clock, I called. She adjusted her aim without looking and fired twice. The guard fell, tumbling over the railing to crash onto the concrete floor below. Reed's voice cut through the chaos. Enough. Stand down, or the girl dies. The gunfire stuttered to a halt. Through the red-tinged darkness, I could make out Reed on the central platform, Emma held in front of him, gun to her head. Her eyes were wide with terror, tears streaming down her face. Mom, she called, voice breaking. I'm here, baby, Sarah answered, raw emotion in her words. I'm right here. Everything's going to be okay. Reed laughed. That depends entirely on your friend Jack. His eyes found me in the shadows. The drive commander. Now. I put a bullet in her brain. I stepped into the open, hands raised, pistol dangling from one finger. Let her go, Reed. She's not part of this. Everyone's part of this. Reed shouted, a crack in his composed facade. Do you have any idea what's on that drive? What it could do? I know exactly what's on it. I replied calmly, moving closer, one step at a time. Every operation, every name, every dirty secret the agency never wanted found. Reed's gun pressed harder against Emma's temple. Then you know why I can't let it get out. Let the girl go, I said again, and I'll take you to it. Reed studied me, weighing my words. And I'm supposed to trust you? You train me, Reed. You know I don't break my word. A tense silence followed, broken only by Emma's quiet sobs. Finally, Reed nodded. Fine, but the chief stays here. Insurance. I glanced at Sarah, saw the minute nod. We had planned for this contingency. Deal, I agreed. Reed shoved Emma forward. She ran to her mother, collapsing into Sarah's arms with a cry. Now, Reed said, raising his gun to point at my chest, you and I are going to take a little drive. As we moved toward the exit, the emergency lights flickered again. Reed glanced up, momentarily distracted. It was all the opening I needed. I closed the distance between us in 2 steps, knocking his arm aside as he fired. The bullet grazed my shoulder, hot pain lancing through me. But momentum carried me forward, and we crashed to the ground together, rolling across the concrete floor. Reed was in remarkable shape for his age, meeting my attacks with counters on myself had taught him years ago. We grappled, each seeking advantage, old muscle memory against fresh training. You're not the only one who kept in practice, Jack, Reed grunted, landing a solid blow to my kidney. I absorbed the pain, using my weight to pin him momentarily. Practice is one thing, I replied. Field experience is another. Blood slicked the floor beneath us. Mine or his, I couldn't tell. Around us, gunfire had erupted again as Reed's remaining men engaged with my team. Then Reed did something unexpected. He stopped fighting. You want to know why I'm really here, Jack? He asked, voice suddenly calm despite our position. I know why. I growled, maintaining my hold. Reed shook his head slightly. No, you don't. It's not about the drive. It's about Annie. The name hit like a physical blow. My grip loosened for just a fraction of a second, enough for Reed to slam his forehead into my nose. Stars exploded across my vision as I reeled back. Reed scrambled away, retrieving his weapon. Blood streamed from a cut above his eye as he aimed at my head. Your wife took something far more valuable than that drive, he said, breathing heavily. And I'm going to find out where she hid it, with or without your help. As his finger tightened on the trigger, a single shot rang out. Reed staggered, looking down in surprise at the red stains spreading across his chest. Behind him stood Sarah, her weapon steady in her hands. That's for threatening my daughter, she said quietly. Reed fell to his knees, gun clattering to the floor. You don't understand, he gasped, eyes locked on mine. She's alive, Jack. Annie's alive. The words hung in the air as Reed collapsed forward, blood pooling beneath him. I stared at his still form, mind racing. It couldn't be true. Annie was dead. I'd watch her die. Unless. Sarah approached, touching my arm gently. Jack, are you hit? I shook my head slowly, still processing Reed's final words. Where's Emma? Safe. Wilson has her. Sarah studied my face. What did he say to you? Before I could answer, Jackson's voice crackled through Sarah's radio. "Commander, we've got a problem. There's another team approaching from south. Heavy vehicles, at least a dozen men." I looked down at Reed's body. He wouldn't have come without backup. And if what he said about Annie was true, "We need to move," I said, retrieving Reed's weapon. "Now." As we ran for the exit, Reed's words echoed in my mind. Annie alive? Impossible. Yet a small, treacherous spark of hope flickered to life in my chest. The night was far from over, and the truth, I suspected, was far darker than any of us had imagined. I tasted blood in my mouth as we raced through the darkness, the weight of Reed's final words pressing down on me like a physical burden. Annie alive? The idea seemed impossible, yet it burrowed into my mind, taking root despite everything I knew to be true. "This way," Jackson whispered, leading us toward a drainage ditch that ran along the eastern edge of the property. The sound of vehicles grew louder behind us. Heavy engines, military grade from the sound of them. Reed's backup had arrived, and they weren't bothering with stealth. "Mom, I'm scared," Emma whimpered, clinging to Sarah's hand as we crouched in shadows. The girl's face was streaked with tears, her eyes wide with terror no child should know. "I know, baby," Sarah soothed, her voice calm despite the danger. "But Uncle Jack and his friends are going to keep us safe. Remember the camping trips we used to take? This is just like that, an adventure." I admired Sarah's composure. Her daughter had been kidnapped, threatened at gunpoint, and witnessed multiple deaths, yet she maintained a steady presence for Emma's sake. She'd make a hell of a field operative. 2 minutes to evac, Martinez reported, checking the small tactical pad strapped to his wrist. He looked the same as when I'd last seen him 5 years ago. Compact, efficient, deadly. "Wilson has the perimeter secure, but these guys are moving fast." I nodded, making a quick decision. "Change of plans. Sarah and Emma take the first extraction vehicle. Head for the backup safe house in Oak Ridge. We'll meet you there." Sarah's eyes narrowed. "Jack, what are you thinking?" I met her gaze steadily. "Reed said something about Annie, about her being alive." "And you believe him?" she asked incredulously. "Jack, we buried her together. I was with you both through the whole illness." "I know," I said, the memory of those dark days still fresh despite the years. "But Reed wouldn't have said it if it wasn't useful to him somehow. There's something more here, something we're missing." A searchlight swept over the field behind us, illuminating the rain-soaked grass in harsh white light. We pressed ourselves lower into the ditch. "Whatever you're planning, it needs to wait," Jackson urged. "We're out of time." The decision tore at me. We needed to get Emma to safety. We needed to regroup, tend to our wounds, figure out our next move. But something in Reed's dying words had struck a chord, a discordant note in the symphony of lies I'd been living with for years. "Uncle Jack," Emma's small voice broke through my thoughts. She reached out, her tiny hand grasping my much larger one. "Are you coming with us?" The trust in her eyes settled the matter. "Yes, sweetheart. We're all leaving together." The extraction was a blur of movement, running doubled over through the drainage ditch, emerging near a cluster of abandoned farm equipment where Wilson waited with 2 nondescript SUVs. Emma and Sarah took the first vehicle with Martinez at the wheel, while Jackson, Wilson, and I followed in the second. As we pulled away, I watched floodlights illuminate the grain facility behind us, figures swarming like angry ants. "They're not pursuing," Wilson noted, checking the mirrors as we merged on the highway. "Why aren't they pursuing?" It was a good question. With their resources, they could have easily overtaken us. Because they don't need to, I realized aloud. They know where we're going. Jackson turned to look at me. "The safe house is clean. I set it up myself." I shook my head. "Not the safe house. My farm." I pulled out the satellite phone, dialing Martinez in the lead vehicle. "Change of plans. The safe house is compromised. Head for checkpoint Delta." "Copy that," came the terse reply. Wilson adjusted our route without question, the years melting away as we fell back into the old rhythms of operation. For a moment, it was as if I'd never left, never traded my tactical gear for overalls, never planted tomatoes where I once planted explosives. "You want to tell us what Reed said that's got you so spooked?" Jackson asked after several minutes of silence. I stared out at the dark countryside flashing past. He said, "Annie's alive." The silence in the car was deafening. "Jack," Wilson began carefully, "we all loved Annie. But we were all at the funeral. She's gone. What if she isn't?" The question had been plaguing me since Reed's dying declaration. What if she faked her death? What if I helped her do it? "You think you'd remember something like that?" Jackson said dryly. "Unless I was made to forget," I countered. The implication hung heavy in the air. Memory manipulation wasn't just science fiction anymore. Our unit had been among the first to field test the agency's early protocols. The thought that such techniques might have been used on me was both terrifying and strangely hopeful. "Even if that were true," Wilson said slowly, "why would Annie fake her death? What could be worth abandoning her life, her friends, you?" The answer came to me with sudden clarity. To protect something more important than any of us. We arrived at Checkpoint Delta just before dawn, an old hunting cabin deep in the national forest, so ordinary it was invisible. Martinez had already secured the perimeter, and Sarah had managed to get Emma to sleep on a small cot in the corner. "She's finally out," Sarah whispered as we entered. Her eyes locked with mine. "Jack, what's going on?" Martinez said the safe house was compromised. I sank into a chair at the rough wooden table, suddenly aware of every ache in my aging body. "I need to tell you something, all of you. Something I've been trying to forget for 5 years." They gathered around the table as I spoke, my voice low to avoid waking Emma. I told them about the operation in Serbia, about the files we weren't supposed to find, about the names that appeared in those files, senators, generals, cabinet secretaries, all linked to black site operations that violated every rule of engagement, every principle we thought we were fighting to uphold. The agency wanted those files buried, I explained. Reed was tasked with making sure they stayed that way. But I made a copy. "The drive," Sarah said, understanding dawning on her face. I nodded. I kept it as insurance, protection for the team, for Annie, for myself. After I retired, I thought it was over. But then Annie got sick. "The cancer was real," Sarah insisted. "I saw her medical records, Jack. I was there for her treatments." "Yes," I agreed. "The cancer was real. But what if her death wasn't?" I took a deep breath. 2 weeks before she supposedly died, Annie told me something. Something I dismissed as the ramblings of a woman on heavy painkillers. She said she'd found something in the files that was worse than anything we'd imagined. Something that made her dangerous to people even more powerful than Reed. The room was silent except for Emma's soft breathing. The night before she died, I continued, the memory surfacing like a bubble from dark waters. She asked to be alone with me. The doctors had given her days at most. She made me promise 2 things, to protect what we'd found, and to forget what she was about to tell me. Jackson leaned forward. "Which was?" I shook my head. "I don't remember." The next thing I knew, it was morning, and the nurses were telling me she was gone. I looked up at my old team, at Sarah, at the sleeping form of my goddaughter. What if she didn't die? What if she found a way out, and I helped her disappear? And then what? "You wiped your own memory?" Wilson asked skeptically. "Maybe," I admitted. "Or maybe someone else did." Sarah reached across the table, taking my hand. "Jack, what does this have to do with Reed coming after you now? After all these years?" Before I could answer, a small device on Martinez's belt began to vibrate. He checked it, his expression darkening. "Perimeter alarm," he said, drawing his weapon. "Someone's found us." We moved with practiced efficiency. Jackson and Wilson taking defensive positions by the windows, Martinez securing the rear exit, Sarah gathering the still sleeping Emma in her arms. But as I reached for my weapon, a blinding pain exploded behind my eyes. Images flashed through my mind. Annie's face, pale but determined. A sterile room with strange equipment. A whispered conversation. "Jack!" Sarah's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Jack, what's wrong?" I clutched my head, the pain intensifying. Memory trigger, I gasped. "Annie, she did something to me. Made me forget until it was time to remember." As the pain subsided, clarity rushed in. I knew what Reed had been looking for. I knew why he'd come for me after all these years. And I knew, with absolute certainty, that Annie was alive. "We need to get to the old Carson mine," I said, my voice stronger now. That's where she'll be waiting. Martinez looked confused. Who? I smiled for the first time in what felt like years. My wife. The first bullet shattered the cabin window before I could explain further. Glass exploded inward as we all dropped to the floor, training taking over. Emma woke with a frightened cry, and Sarah covered her daughter's body with her own. Contact front, Wilson shouted, returning fire through the broken window. Multiple hostiles, taking positions around the perimeter. I crawled to the nearest window, staying below the sill as I peered out. Dawn was just breaking, casting long shadows through the trees. I counted at least 6 figures moving between cover positions, their movements disciplined and coordinated. Not Reed's team, this was someone new. Their agency, I called to the others. Standard tactical formation. How the hell did they find us? Martinez demanded, checking his ammunition. I knew the answer even before I spotted the familiar figure directing operations from behind a large oak. Because they followed him, I said grimly. Through the morning mist, Colonel Harper stood calmly watching the cabin, his silver hair catching the early light. If Reed had been my mentor, Harper had been the man behind the curtain, pulling strings from the highest levels of the agency. Who is that? Sarah asked, keeping Emma's head down as she moved them toward the back room. Colonel Richard Harper, I explained, Deputy Director of Special Operations. If he's here personally, this is bigger than we thought. Jackson swore under his breath. Harper was supposed to be retired. Apparently not, I said, formulating a plan. We need to split up. They want me. The rest of you can get clear if I create a diversion. Not happening, Commander, Martinez said firmly. We go together or not at all. There's a child involved. I reminded him, nodding toward Emma. Her safety comes first. Before anyone could respond, a voice called out from outside. Jack Reeves, this is Colonel Harper. I know you can hear me. Let's talk like reasonable men. I exchanged glances with my team. Harper wasn't known for negotiation. The fact that he was trying to talk instead of simply storming the cabin was significant. What do you want, Harper? I called back. Just a conversation, Jack. About your wife. Despite expecting it, the words still hit like a physical blow. So Reed had been telling the truth. Annie was alive, and Harper knew it. And why would I want to talk about that? I responded, playing for time as Martinez worked to secure the back exit. Because she's been very busy these past 3 years, Harper replied. And I think you'll want to know what she's been doing. I caught Jackson's eye and made a series of hand signals. He nodded, understanding the plan without words. Wilson moved silently to the rear of the cabin while Sarah guided Emma into a small storage closet, the safest place if bullets started flying. I'm coming out, I called. Just me. The others stay inside. Jack, no, Sarah hissed, but I shook my head. Trust me, I whispered. Get them out while they're focused on me. The tunnel under the woodpile, remember? Sarah nodded reluctantly. The cabin had been built by operatives for operatives. Every escape route had been carefully planned. I handed my weapon to Martinez. Give me 3 minutes, then move. 5 minutes, he countered. We'll be in position by then. Taking a deep breath, I stood with my hands raised. I'm coming out unarmed, I called, then stepped through the door into the cool morning air. Harper stood 30 yards away, flanked by 2 younger agents with their weapons trained on me. He looked exactly as I remembered, tall, distinguished, with the bearing of a man comfortable with power. Jack, he greeted me, as if we were meeting for coffee. You're looking different. I patted my substantial belly. Retirement agrees with me. Clearly, his eyes flicked over me, assessing, calculating. Where are the others? Safe, I replied, which is how they're going to stay. Harper smiled thinly. Always protecting your team. Some things never change. He gestured to a fallen log. Shall we sit? I find these early mornings hard on my knees these days. It was such an ordinary suggestion that I almost laughed. Here we were, surrounded by armed men, caught in a web of decades-old secrets, and he wanted to talk about his arthritis. I sat, keeping my movements slow and deliberate, for minutes until Martinez and the others made their move. I needed to keep Harper talking. You said Annie's been busy, I prompted. Harper nodded, settling beside me with a small grunt. Very. She's been quite the thorn in my side, actually. Your wife always was clever. Too clever for her own good. She's alive, then, I said, the words still strange on my tongue despite my growing certainty. Oh yes, Harper confirmed, though not for lack of trying on our part. Anger flared in my chest. You've been hunting her. Naturally, Harper seemed unperturbed by my reaction. She took something that doesn't belong to her. Something far more valuable than that drive you're carrying around inside you. I kept my face neutral, though inwardly I was shocked. How did he know about the drive's location? Reed talked before he died. Harper explained, reading my expression. He wasn't as tough as he liked to think. That didn't sound right. Reed might have been many things, but weak wasn't one of them. I filed the inconsistency away, focusing on the more important question. What did Annie take? I asked. Harper studied me for a long moment. You really don't know, do you? He shook his head. Fascinating. The memory block held even after the trigger. Your wife's work, I assume, always the best in the field. The pieces clicked into place. Annie hadn't been just my wife. She'd been an operative too. One with specialized skills in cognitive manipulation. The realization should have shocked me, but instead it felt like remembering something I'd always known. What did she take, Harper? I repeated. He sighed. A child, Jack. She took a child. Of all the answers I'd been expecting, this wasn't one of them. What are you talking about? Project Genesis, Harper said, lowering his voice though there was no one nearby to hear. Our most advanced program. Selective breeding, genetic manipulation, accelerated development. We were creating the next generation of operatives, perfect in every way. The horror of what he was describing washed over me. Human experimentation, I said flatly. Harper waved a dismissive hand. Scientific advancement. These children would have capabilities beyond anything we've seen before. Annie was one of our cognitive specialists. She helped design the memory protocol for the program. Until she discovered what you were really doing, I guessed. Until she grew a conscience, Harper corrected, which is inconvenient in our line of work, as you well know. He checked his watch, a gesture that sent a chill down my spine. He was timing something too. 3 years ago, he continued, Annie faked her death with your unwitting assistance, infiltrated our primary facility, and escaped with one of our subjects. A girl, 5 years old at the time, the most promising of the Genesis children. My mind raced, calculating dates, piecing together a timeline that suddenly made terrible sense. Emma, I breathed, the name barely audible. Harper smiled coldly. Very good, Jack. Yes, Emma, not Sarah Chin's biological daughter, though the chief believes she is. Another of Annie's memory alterations. Quite brilliant, really. She gave the child to someone she trusted, someone with the skills to protect her, and then made everyone involved believe their own cover story. The revelation staggered me. Emma, Sarah's beloved daughter, was actually a test subject from a classified government program. A child Annie had rescued at great personal risk. Why tell me this now? I asked, stalling. 2 minutes until Martinez would move. Because Annie has contacted us, Harper replied. She's offering a trade, herself for the child, and I need you to broker that exchange. I didn't bother hiding my surprise. Why would I help you after what you've done? Because if you don't, I'll order my men to enter that cabin and kill everyone inside, Harper said matter-of-factly, including the child you and Annie have gone to such lengths to protect. He was bluffing. I knew my team had already begun evacuating through the tunnel, but I needed to keep him talking, keep his attention on me. Even if I wanted to help, I don't know how to contact Annie, I said truthfully. Harper smiled again, and there was something in his expression that made my blood run cold. But you do, Jack. The trigger activated more than just your conscious memories. You know exactly where she is, you just don't realize it yet. As if his words had flipped a switch, another wave of pain crashed through my head. Images flashed before my eyes. Annie, healthy and determined, briefing me on a contingency plan, a small cabin deep in the mountains. Geographic coordinates burned into my memory. When the pain subsided, I knew he was right. I knew exactly where Annie was waiting. Let the others go, I said quietly. All of them, Sarah, Emma, my team. Let them disappear, and I'll take you to Annie. Harper considered this. Your team, perhaps, but the child comes with us. That's non-negotiable. Then we have nothing to discuss. I rose to my feet, praying the others had had enough time. Harper sighed, also standing. I was afraid you'd say that. He raised his hand, about to signal his men to advance on the cabin, when a single gunshot rang out from the trees. Harper's eyes widened in surprise as a red stain blossomed on his immaculate shirt. He looked down at it curiously, then back at me. She said you might be difficult, he managed before collapsing. Chaos erupted as his men scrambled for cover, returning fire toward the unseen shooter. I dove behind the log as bullets chewed up the ground where I'd been standing. Through the confusion, a familiar voice called out from the tree lane. Jack, this way. I'd know that voice anywhere, had heard in my dreams for 3 years. Moving in a crouch, I made my way toward it as gunfire continued to erupt behind me. And there she was, older, harder, her blonde hair now dark brown and cut short, but unmistakably Annie. My wife. Alive. You're late, she said, the ghost of a smile playing around her lips. Words failed me. I reached for her, needing to touch her, to confirm she was real. She caught my hand, her expression softening. I know, she said, and I'll explain everything. But right now we need to move. Where's Emma? With Sarah, I replied, finding my voice at last. They should be clear by now. Annie nodded, relief evident on her face. Good. The extraction point is 2 miles north. Can you make it? You've gotten. She gestured at my midsection. Despite everything, I laughed. I can make it. But Annie, Harper said. Later, she cut me off. Harper's men are regrouping. We have maybe 3 minutes before they flank our position. As if to emphasize her point, bullets splintered the tree next to us. Annie returned fire with practiced efficiency, then grabbed my hand. Run now, she said. Talk later. As we fled through the forest, I knew that nothing would ever be the same again. My peaceful life as a farmer was over. My dead wife was alive, and somewhere ahead, Emma, not Sarah's daughter, but a child bred in a laboratory, was the center of a storm that had been brewing for years. Harper had called her the most promising of the Genesis children. What did that mean? What was Emma capable of? And what would happen when she discovered the truth of who and what she really was? I pushed the questions aside, focusing on keeping pace with Annie as we ran deeper into the forest. The answers would come soon enough. For now, we had to survive. Blood dripped from a cut above my eye as I followed Annie through the dense forest. Gunfire echoed behind us, growing fainter as we put distance between ourselves and Harper's men. My lungs burned with each breath, my body reminding me that I was no longer the soldier I once was. 5 years of peaceful farming had softened me in ways I was only now beginning to fully understand. Almost there, Annie said, glancing back at me. Her eyes, those familiar blue eyes I'd thought were closed forever, assessed my condition with professional detachment. Can you make it over this ridge? I nodded, not wasting breath on words. The woman running effortlessly ahead of me was both achingly familiar and completely foreign. This wasn't the Annie who had baked bread on Sunday mornings, who had taught local children about sustainable farming. This was Operative Reeves, one of the agency's top cognitive specialists, a woman I had apparently never fully known, despite being married to her for 12 years. We crested the ridge, and I saw it, a small clearing where a helicopter waited, rotors already spinning. Martinez stood by the open door, weapon at the ready. Relief washed over me when I spotted Sarah inside, holding Emma close. They made it, I gasped. Annie nodded. Jackson and Wilson are providing rear security. They'll join us in 2 minutes. The casual way she referred to my old team meant she had supposedly never met in her role as my civilian wife, sent another shock of dissonance through me. How much of our life together had been real? How much had been an operation? We stumbled down the slope toward the helicopter. Martinez nodded at me, then stared openly at Annie. Ma'am, he said simply, helping us aboard. Sarah's reaction was more visceral. Her face went pale at the sight of Annie, her arms tightening protectively around Emma. It's true, she whispered. You're alive. Annie met her gaze steadily. Hello, Sarah. Thank you for taking care of her. Her eyes shifted to Emma, who was watching her with wary curiosity. "Who are you?" Emma asked, her small voice somehow audible over the helicopter's engine. Something flickered across Annie's face, pain, tenderness, regret, before her professional mask returned. "A friend," she said simply. "Someone who's been looking out for you from far away." Before Emma could respond, Jackson and Wilson emerged from the trees at a dead run. "Company," Jackson shouted as they leaped into the helicopter. 30 seconds out, the pilot, a woman I didn't recognize, immediately pulled up on the collective. The helicopter lifted off just as armed men burst into the clearing, their bullets pinging harmlessly against the reinforced undercarriage. As we soared away, I slumped against the seat, exhaustion washing over me. Annie immediately went to work, checking me for injuries with practiced hands. "The cut's superficial," she determined. "You'll live." "Thanks for the professional opinion," I said dryly. "Anything else you'd like to tell me about my condition, doctor?" Annie's eyes hardened slightly at my tone. "You have questions. I understand that." "Questions?" I laughed without humor. "Annie, you faked your death. You let me grieve for 3 years while you were what? Running some kind of underground railroad for genetically enhanced children." The helicopter cabin fell silent except for the thrum of the rotors. Even Emma seemed to sense the weight of the moment, burrowing closer to Sarah. Annie glanced at the others, then back to me. "This isn't the time or place, Jack." "When is?" I demanded. "After 3 years of believing you were dead, I think I'm entitled to some answers." Martinez cleared his throat awkwardly. "Commander, we're 20 minutes from the safe house. Maybe save the reunion for when we're secure." He was right, of course. Tactical considerations came first. They always had in our world. Personal feelings had to wait. I nodded stiffly and turned to look out the window, watching the forest rush by below us. Annie moved to sit beside the pilot, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I studied her profile covertly, the determined set of her jaw, the watchful alertness that I now recognized had always been there, even during our supposedly peaceful years together. Had any of it been real? The love I thought we shared? The safe house turned out to be an old hunting lodge deep in the mountains, at least 50 miles from the nearest town. As we landed in a small clearing behind it, I noticed the subtle security measures, cameras disguised as birdhouses, motion sensors hidden in the undergrowth, defensive positions with clear lines of sight. "Welcome to Blackwood," Annie said as we disembarked. "The agency doesn't know about this place. It's off their grid. Your own private fortress," I remarked. "Something like that." She led us inside, where equipment and supplies suggested long-term occupation. "Make yourselves comfortable. There's food in the kitchen, bedrooms upstairs. We should be safe here for at least 48 hours. Safe. The word seemed hollow. We were being hunted by the most powerful intelligence agency in the world, led by people willing to conduct experiments on children. How safe could we ever be? While the others settled in, checking the perimeter and attending to Emma's needs, Annie motioned for me to follow her into what appeared to be a study. "Now," she said, closing the door behind us. "We can talk." I stood staring at her, taking in every detail of the woman I'd thought I'd never see again. Her hair was different, her body leaner and harder than I remembered, but her eyes were the same, intelligent, determined, and now filled with an emotion I couldn't quite identify. "Why?" I asked simply. It was the only question that mattered. Annie sighed, suddenly looking exhausted. "I discovered something, Jack. Something terrible. Project Genesis wasn't just about creating enhanced operatives. It was about creating controllable ones. Children whose minds could be programmed, whose loyalties could be absolutely assured through cognitive conditioning. Like the memory manipulation you used on me," I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. "Yes," she admitted, "but much more invasive, more complete. And Emma was different. She resisted the conditioning. Her mind fought back in ways the scientists couldn't understand or control. So you took her." Annie nodded. "I couldn't leave her there. What they planned to do to her when the standard protocols failed." She shuddered. "I couldn't be part of it anymore. And you couldn't tell me?" The hurt in my voice was raw. "You didn't trust me enough to help you?" "It wasn't about trust, Jack." Annie stepped closer, her eyes pleading for understanding. It was about protection, yours as much as ours. If you genuinely believed I was dead, if your grief was real, they would have no reason to suspect you were involved. Your memory alteration wasn't just a trick, it was a shield. I wanted to be angry, to hold on to the feeling of betrayal, but the logic was sound. It was exactly the kind of calculated decision I would have made in her position. The cancer? I asked. Was that real? Yes and no, she replied. I was sick, but not terminal. We used my illness as cover for the plan. The memory specialist who helped with your procedure is dead now. Harper's work. He tied up loose ends thoroughly. A knock at the door interrupted us. Martinez opened it without waiting for a response. Sorry to interrupt, he said, but you need to see this. He led us to the main room, where a large monitor displayed a news broadcast. The headline made my blood run cold. Terrorist attack foils child kidnapping. Manhunt underway. The reporter spoke gravely about a group of extremists, showing grainy photos of me, Annie, and the team who had kidnapped a child and killed federal agents. The public was urged to report any sightings immediately. They're burning us, Wilson said grimly. All of us. Which means they're desperate, Annie replied. Harper must have had contingency plans that activated after his death. Sarah stood from where she'd been sitting with Emma. They're calling us terrorists. They're saying we kidnapped Emma. Her voice shook with anger and fear. Where's Emma now? Annie asked sharply. Upstairs, sleeping, Sarah replied. She finally crashed after everything. Annie nodded, then turned to address us all. This changes our timeline. We need to move sooner than I planned. Move where? I asked. To the only place that can protect us now, she said. To the evidence. Her words hung in the air as realization dawned on me. The Serbia files. They're not just about unauthorized operations, are they? No, Annie confirmed. They're the foundation of Project Genesis. The breeding program, the conditioning protocols, everything. The complete record of what they've been doing to these children for 15 years. I thought of the small drive implanted in my body, a burden I'd carried for years without fully understanding its importance. And you need it, I said. It wasn't a question. Yes, Annie replied. Combined with what I've already gathered, it's enough to bring down everyone involved. Enough to ensure Emma and the others will be safe. Others? Jackson asked. Annie's expression softened for the first time since our reunion. Emma isn't the only child I've helped escape. There are others, 12 of them, hidden away in safe locations. Children who didn't fit the program, who resisted like Emma did. The enormity of what she had accomplished alone hit me. While I've been growing tomatoes and feeling sorry for myself, Annie had been running a one-woman resistance against the most powerful people in our government. Why didn't you come to us? Martinez asked. We would have helped you. I couldn't risk it, Annie said. Not until I was certain who could be trusted. The program has operatives everywhere, some who don't even know they're being controlled. She looked around at all of us, her gaze finally settling on me. But now I need your help. All of you. One last mission to finish this. What's the target? Wilson asked, the soldier in him already analyzing potential approaches. Annie smiled grimly. The heart of Project Genesis itself. We're going to infiltrate Facility Black, recover the research subjects still held there, and expose everything to the world. Silence fell as we absorbed the magnitude of what she was proposing. A direct assault on a classified government facility. A rescue mission. And if we succeeded, the revelation of a conspiracy that went to the highest levels of power. There's something you're not telling us, I said, studying my wife's face. What is it? Annie hesitated, then squared her shoulders. Emma isn't just any test subject. She's the first of her kind, a child with abilities we're only beginning to understand. Abilities that certain people would kill to control. She looked directly at Sarah, and she's starting to remember who she really is. As if summoned by her words, a small voice spoke from the stairway. I dreamed about you, Emma said, looking at Annie with unervingly focused eyes. I remember the white room. I remember when you took me away. Annie went very still. What else do you remember, Emma? The girl's expression changed subtly, becoming almost adult in its intensity. Everything, she said simply. I remember everything now. Dawn broke over the mountains as we finalized our approach. Emma sat cross-legged on the floor, drawing a detailed map of Facility Black from memory, a facility she hadn't seen in 3 years. Her small hand moved with eerie precision, marking security checkpoints, camera positions, guard rotations. The holding area for the children is here, she said, tapping the paper with a crayon. Underground, 2 levels down. There are 15 of them now. I exchanged glances with Annie, who nodded slightly. This was what she meant about Emma being special. The child's memory wasn't just good, it was photographically perfect, enhanced beyond normal human capability. What about security systems? Jackson asked gently, kneeling beside Emma. He'd taken to the girl immediately, treating her with the same respect he would show any intelligence officer. Emma switched to a red crayon. Motion sensors here, and here. Retinal scanners at all main doors. The guard changes at 0, 600 and 1800. The military precision in her childish voice sent a chill down my spine. What had they done to her? What had they done to all these children? Sarah watched from the doorway, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. Learning that Emma wasn't biologically hers had been devastating, but her love for the child remained unshaken. If anything, it had grown fiercer with the knowledge of what Emma had endured. Once we're inside, Annie continued, we split into 3 teams. Jack and I will secure the data center. Martinez and Wilson will handle the extraction of the children. Sarah, Jackson, and the pilot will maintain our exit strategy. What about me? Emma asked, looking up from her drawing. Annie hesitated. You'll stay with Sarah? It's safer. Emma's expression darkened. I need to go. They won't trust you. They'll only come with me. Absolutely not, Sarah interjected. You're not going back into that place. She's right, I said, surprised to find myself siding with Emma. The other children don't know us. If they've been conditioned the way Annie describes, they may resist extraction by strangers. She's 8 years old, Jack, Sarah protested. No, Annie said quietly. Biologically, she's 8. Cognitively, She trailed off, looking at Emma with a mixture of wonder and sadness. I'm me, Emma said simply, and I need to help my friends. The room fell silent. I studied Emma, this child who was at the center of everything, who had brought Annie back from the dead and dragged me from my peaceful retirement. There was something in her eyes that went beyond her years, beyond normal human development. Something both miraculous and terrifying. We'll discuss it more on the way, Annie finally decided. We move in 4 hours. Everyone get some rest while you can. As the others dispersed, I followed Annie back to the study. She was checking weapons, her movements precise and familiar. You've been planning this for a long time, I observed. She didn't look up. 3 years, 2 months, and 14 days. Since the night I died in that hospital room. With me sitting right beside you, I said, unable to keep the hurt from my voice. Holding your hand, Annie finally met my gaze. Do you think that was easy for me, Jack? Watching you grieve, knowing what would do to you. Her voice cracked slightly. I loved you. I still do. But those children needed me more than you did. I moved closer, drawn to her despite everything. And now, do you still need to do this alone? No, she admitted softly. I don't think I can anymore. She reached up, her fingers gently tracing the outline of my face. You got fat. I surprised myself by laughing. I took up baking. Someone had to make the bread on Sundays. A ghost of a smile touched her lips. I missed your bread, and she was all business again. We should talk about the extraction procedure for the drive. You mean cutting it out of me? I mean removing it safely, she corrected. I have medical supplies here. With local anesthetic, it should be relatively painless. I nodded. Let's do it now. Better to have it before we go in. The procedure was quick but uncomfortable. Annie's hands were steady as she made the small incision just below my rib cage, extracted the tiny waterproof capsule, and stitched me up again. 5 years I'd carried that burden inside me, never fully understanding its importance. Will it be enough? I asked as she cleaned the small metal container. Combined with what I already have, yes. She connected the drive to a specialized reader. This is the missing piece, The original authorization for Project Genesis, signed by people whose names would shock even you. I watched as she worked, marveling at this side of her I'd never fully seen during our marriage. How did you do it? All of this on your own? Annie's eyes remained on the screen. I wasn't entirely alone. There are others who discover the truth, who've been helping from inside. People with conscience in places you wouldn't expect. Like who? She finally looked up. Like Colonel Reed. The name hit me like a physical blow. Reed? You tried to kill us. Annie shook her head. No, Jack. Reed was my contact. He was helping me locate the remaining children. His death wasn't part of the plan. I struggled to process this new information. But at the grain facility, he held Emma at gunpoint. A necessary deception, Annie explained. Harper was watching. Reed needed to maintain his cover. Then who shot him? Harper's people. They discovered he was feeding me information. Her expression darkened. His dying words to you were a message. His way of telling you I was alive and that you needed to remember. The realization sent me reeling. Reed, my mentor turned enemy, turned ally again. And I'd never known. Anyone else I should know about? I asked, attempting humor to mask my confusion. Is the mailman a secret operative too? Annie didn't smile. Emma, she said simply. She's not just a test subject, Jack. She's the reason for everything. What do you mean? She hesitated, clearly weighing how much to tell me. Project Genesis wasn't just about creating better operatives. It was about the next stage of human evolution, controlled, directed evolution. Emma is what they call a breakthrough. The first success after 14 years of failures. Success at what? I asked, though part of me didn't want to know the answer. Cognitive enhancement beyond normal parameters, Annie replied carefully. Emma can do things with her mind that shouldn't be possible. That's why she remembers everything. Why she can draw perfect maps from memory. But it goes beyond that. A chill ran down my spine. What are you saying? Before Annie could answer, an alarm blared throughout the lodge. We both jumped to our feet, Annie quickly securing the drive in a hidden pocket. Perimeter breach, she said, grabbing her weapon. They found us. We rushed in the main room, where Martinez was already at the security monitors. 2 helicopters approaching from the south, he reported. Heavy tactical team, at least 12 men. Ow! Sarah demanded, holding Emma close. How did they find us? Annie's face went pale as realization dawned. They're tracking Emma, she whispered. They must have implanted something when she was in the program. But you checked her, Sarah protested. When you first took her, you said you checked for tracking devices. Standard ones, yes. Annie knelt in front of Emma. Sweetheart, did they ever perform surgery on you? Put something inside you that might still be there. Emma frowned, concentrating. No surgery, just injections. Every week in the White Room. Nanobots, Annie breathed. They were experimenting with trackable nanotechnology before I left. I should have considered the possibility. Explanations later, Jackson interrupted. We need a move now. Annie nodded. Evacuation plan B. The vehicles are hidden in the old mine shaft. We could be gone before they land. As the others rushed to gather essential equipment, I pulled Annie aside. This changes everything. If they can track Emma, Facility Black is a suicide mission. No, I mean Steve. This just moves up our timeline. Once we have the evidence secured and the children safe, Emma's tracker won't matter anymore. The sound of approaching helicopters grew louder. Jack, Annie said urgently, whatever happens, the drive has to reach Senator Clark. She's the only one with enough power to protect us once the story breaks. I nodded, making a mental note of the name. We'll make it happen. We raced for the mine entrance behind the lodge, a cleverly disguised opening that led to a large natural cavern. 2 nondescript SUVs waited, engines already running. Annie's contingency plan in action. First vehicle, Sarah, Emma, and Martinez, Annie directed. Second, the rest of us. Mountain route to the secondary rendezvous point. As we loaded the vehicles, gunfire erupted from above. Harper's men had landed and were approaching rapidly. Go, Annie shouted, pushing Sarah and Emma into the first SUV. We'll be right behind you. Martinez gunned the engine, the vehicle disappearing down the rough tunnel that led away from the lodge. The rest of us piled into the second SUV, Wilson taking the wheel. "Wait," Jackson said suddenly, checking his weapon. "We need to slow them down or they'll follow us right to the rendezvous point." Before anyone could stop him, he was out of the vehicle, moving into position at the mine entrance. "Cover fire only," Annie called after him. 30 seconds, then you follow us." Jackson nodded, already settling behind a large boulder with his rifle ready. Wilson navigated the tunnel expertly, the SUV bumping over the uneven ground. Annie sat beside me in the back seat, checking a tablet that showed our planned route. "Once we hit the main road, it's 60 miles to Facility Black," she said. "If we push it, we could be there in under an hour." "And the other team?" I asked. "They'll circle around, approach from the north as planned. We'll rendezvous at the facility." The tunnel opened onto a narrow forest road, hidden from aerial surveillance by the thick pine canopy. Wilson accelerated, putting distance between us and our pursuers. Minutes stretched into a tense silence as we waited for Jackson to join us. Annie checked her watch repeatedly. "He should be here by now," she said, concern evident in her voice. The radio crackled to life. "Change of plans," Jackson's voice came through, punctuated by the sound of gunfire. "They brought more men than we thought. I've got them bottlenecked, but I can't break free." "Hold position," Annie responded immediately. "We're coming back for you." "Negative," Jackson replied firmly. "Mission parameters clear. The package is priority." A pause, then, "It's been an honor serving with you again, Commander." My throat tightened. "We're not leaving you behind, Jackson." "Yes, you are, sir. That's an order." His voice was calm, decided. "Give my regards to the Senator when you see her." The radio went silent. Annie and I exchanged pained looks. Wilson's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "He's giving us the time we need," Annie said softly. "We have to use it." I nodded, the old familiar weight of command settling onto my shoulders. Some decisions never got easier, no matter how many times you made them. "Stay on course," I told Wilson. "Maximum speed to the facility." We drove in tense silence, each lost in our own thoughts. Jackson had been with me through the worst missions of my career, Kabul, Damascus, Belgrade. He'd saved my life more times than I could count, and now he was making the ultimate sacrifice to save us all. Annie's hand found mine in the darkness of the back seat. "This is the last time," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "The last mission. After this, we find somewhere quiet. Start over." I squeezed her hand, wanting more than anything to believe her. "What about Emma? What happens to her when this is over?" Annie's face softened. "She stays with Sarah, if that's what they both want. They're family now, regardless of biology." "And us?" I asked. "Are we still family?" Her eyes met mine, filled with a complex mixture of regret and hope. "We never stopped being family, Jack, even when I was dead." The facility came into view as we crested a hill, a sprawling complex disguised as a private research hospital, nestled in a remote valley. Innocent looking from the outside, but harboring darkness within. We parked in a service area, as planned in Emma's detailed map. The first SUV was already there, hidden behind a maintenance building. Sarah rushed to meet us as we approached on foot. "Martinez has secured the entry point," she reported. "But Emma..." Her voice faltered. "What about Emma?" Annie asked sharply. "She's changed," Sarah said, her voice barely above a whisper. "It's like being near this place has triggered something in her. She knows things, Annie. Things she couldn't possibly know." Annie's expression tightened. "Where is she now?" "With Martinez. She insisted on going to the entry point. Said she needed to be ready." We moved carefully through the service area toward the maintenance tunnel Emma had identified as our best entry point. Martinez waited there with Emma, and I barely recognized the child I'd known as my goddaughter. She stood straight, her eyes alert and focused, her childish mannerisms gone. When she spoke, her voice was still that of child, but her words were not. "They're waiting for us," she said calmly. "They've always been waiting for us." Her eyes met Annie's. "They want you back almost as much as they want me." Annie knelt to Emma's level. "How do you know that?" Emma touched her temple lightly. "I can hear them." Not their voices, their thoughts. The closer we get, the clearer it becomes. The revelation stunned us all into silence. This, then, was the breakthrough Annie had mentioned. Not just enhanced memory or intelligence, but something far more extraordinary. Can you tell how many guards are inside? Martinez asked, recovering first. Emma closed her eyes briefly. 23 on active duty. 6 scientists in the main lab. 15 children in holding. Her eyes opened, fixing on me. And one person you know very well, Commander Reeves. Someone who's been waiting for you. Before I could ask who, an alarm blared from within the facility. Red emergency lights began flashing along the perimeter. They know we're here, Wilson said, raising his weapon. No, Emma said calmly. They've always known we were coming. This isn't an alarm. It's a welcome. The maintenance door in front of us clicked and swung open on its own. Standing there, illuminated by the red emergency lights, was a face I hadn't seen in over a decade. My daughter. My biological daughter who had allegedly died in a car accident 15 years ago. Hello, Dad, she said, her voice achingly familiar despite the years. Mom, you're right on time. Annie moved forward, tears streaming down her face. Lily, she whispered. Our daughter, grown now, a woman in her 20s, smiled sadly. Welcome to Project Genesis. I've been waiting for you both to come home. Everything, the farm, Reed, Harper, Emma, the missing children, the drive, all of it suddenly snapped into focus. This hadn't been about national security or black ops gone wrong. It had always been about our daughter, about getting her back. And now, standing at the threshold of the facility that had taken her from us, altered her, used her as the template for their experiments, I finally understood the true scope of Annie's plan. This wasn't just a rescue mission. It was a reckoning. Are you ready? Lily asked, her eyes, so like her mother's, moving between us. Annie took my hand, squeezing it tightly. We're ready. As we stepped through the doorway together, I realized that my life as a fat farmer attacked by robbers at a market had been just the opening act of a much larger story. A story that was finally, after 15 years of separation and pain, nearing its conclusion. Whatever waited for us inside, we would face it as we should have been all along, as a family.